Horizon Jazz, one Studio and this is What Sunk the Moskva by Lazerpig. Yeah, Moskva is the flagship ship from Russia, I guess. That was like sank a year or so ago by the Ukrainians, which made the news like, oh, how did that happen? It's like one of those things, like might of Russia. Like it was one of those things like, how did Ukrainians sank this? Just basically like another attack at like whatever pride was left of Russia at that point, because after all the like tanks getting destroyed left and right because of javelins and things, is like, oh my god, like Ukraine don't even have a navy. So okay, how did Russia's big flagship like that got sunk? So I don't know detail about that obviously, so it's gonna be fun watching Lazerpig's video because I don't know detail about how they did it, but yeah, I don't know, it's gonna be interesting. Let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I love videos like this. Basically, usually I react to a lot of military equipment type of videos. Geopolitics is fun as well, but yeah, sometimes also like current events going on type of way. So Lazerpig is like that, right? Lazerpig talks about like tanks and things as well as, also like recent things, I guess. I don't know what the theme of his channel is. Usually military related things, but not much of history, I guess. So yeah, let's watch this one.
Yes, I know everyone wants a Ukraine Part 3, but war is chaos. And like I said before, the ground situation changes constantly. You want proof? In this past week, I've had to re-record this video 3 times because there has been a major update which has completely buggered up everything I've said. Right now, there is a major offensive going on in Kherson, and that would be news enough. And I even had this joke planned for all the Russian military bloggers trying to pass the whole thing off as a feint and a distraction, and that Kharkiv is the real target. And then, just as reinforcements arrived in Kherson, just as the major elements of the 3rd got off the train in their shiny new AK-12s and T-90Ms, Ukraine attacked Kharkiv. It was a distraction. The Russians in the north went into blind panic mode, so much so that our elements of the SOBR units, that's the Special Response Unit of the Spetsnaz, opened fire on each other. Now, these 2 fronts are highly significant. If Kherson falls, if Ukraine takes it back, they can repair the bridges leading across the Dnieper, or more than likely set up a pontoon bridge. I'm probably not pronouncing the name of that river correctly, but this threatens the entire southern region, an area of terrain that Russia previously had an advantage in because, well, that terrain is very difficult to defend, and it's perfect for mass tank movements. But in a few weeks' time, the autumn rains will begin, and this entire region is going to turn into the same mud swamp that apparently stopped the Nazis, meaning they can't use it for mass tank formations and have to defend the hardest terrain to defend at the worst time of the year with the almost nothing that they have left. Which means Metapol, the largest transport hub in the entire...
See, the thing with this is like Russia has history of basically using its terrain in winter and things like that to defend itself. But it's not just Russia, it's like Soviet Union slash pre-Soviet Union Russia, which sometimes can include you. So basically all the time history, right, from the Napoleon to everything, even what was it like when that Swedish king basically tried to attack Russia, right? At that time Ukraine was also part of Russia, basically was like big empire type of way. So all that also includes Ukraine, but now Ukraine and Russia is fighting each other, which means like, okay, like both is going to have advantage, disadvantage based on that, I guess. I don't know.
Southern region is now under immense threat. Ukraine could also retake Mariupol, or it could even attempt to invade and retake Crimea. However, if they win in the north, at Kharkiv, this puts them directly on the border with Russia. That means there is nothing, absolutely nothing, stopping them from invading Russia. And this is Russia's biggest fear. You see, Russia still do not have an overall commander. It has 2. One in the north and one in the south. Now, the South boy outranks...
I don't think they were afraid of like Ukraine invading Russia. Ukraine is like defending itself, like they're great. Ukraine doesn't have a number to invade Russia, so I don't think that was ever a fear. Come on.
The North Boy, but North Boy has priority because he's defending the border. That means anytime Ukraine pokes him, he hits the panic alarm and everything heading south has to turn around. That includes supplies, replacement equipment, and men, and all that takes about 24 hours, not including loading and unloading time, to get supplies from the south to the north and vice versa. Though the ground war is chaotic and we are hearing different things from different units, it does seem that Ukraine is doing quite well. In fact, in Kharkiv, some units have basically nothing in front of them. This has allowed their artillery units to get much closer than anticipated. They targeted radar installations and anti-air units mainly, and since then the Ukrainian Air Force has basically unleashed hell against the Russians. 27 confirmed airstrikes so far against Russian command posts. I mean,
By the way, that dude screaming there, like, why don't you have a helmet there? Like, come on, man. It's like you're literally at the front lines. This is where the phrase comes from. You are at the front lines. You need helmet, man.
munition dumps and army gatherings with 0 known losses. They even managed to shoot down an Su-24. So depending on how the situation unfolds, this is going to be the make it or break it moment for Ukraine. Ukraine is throwing everything it has into this assault, and Russia is throwing everything back. Within these pockets lie the last of Russia's elites. That's the last of the VDV, the last of the 45th GRU Special Forces Brigade, the last of the best tank forces outside of the 1st, the last of the DPR forces, the last of the 3rd, the last of the best equipment and units that Russia currently has. If they lose those units, they have nothing left to continue the advance with. That's it. Ukraine has basically won. I'd love to get into more detail about this, specifically how it has been affecting things back in Russia and the state-sponsored media, because there has been no event in the history of this war that has triggered the Russians so hard. We've seen every excuse on the planet. Even Captain Doesn't Know How Artillery Works was dragged up from the grave to give an opinion. Yes, the dancing anime girls are part of the video. Those were not added in later. Imagine if I did that. Imagine me talking about a serious military operation where people are dying and I get this cute anime boy in the corner just dancing along to K-pop as I discuss it. I mean, some of you would probably like that, but you know, I personally think it's a bit tasteless, but you know, whatever. Oh, but the best has yet to come. My favourite cope excuse so far. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson personally led a group of commandos to capture a nuclear power plant. Yep, that was a thing. They tried to show some evidence of this via the bodies of the commandos, who were bravely beaten back. Few suspicious things in this video that could show it's not being too genuine is the lack of blood on any of the bodies, the lack of shell casings or damage to the terrain around them, etc. The most damning of all was at the end of the video, the man filming states, "Right, video's over," and all the corpses stand up laughing. Yeah, we weren't supposed to see that part. Yet Russia insists that this video is real, and the attack really did happen. Trust me, guys, I know what I'm talking about. I've never lied. Star wipe. So the Moskva. To give everyone.
Okay, seriously, that Boris Johnson thing and this like pretending to be, you know, dead bodies and whatever. Why does everything has to turn into a circus? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, I get it, there's such thing as propaganda, but come on, man. Like, this is serious, right? A lot of damage has happened, a lot of people has died, a lot of people got injured, and like you're gonna do all this type of stuff. It just feels weird, man.
A brief overview for those who do not know. The Moskva was the Russian flagship of the Black Sea. It was one of the most powerful warships in the world and had the nickname the Carrier Killer for its ability to launch multiple anti-ship missiles all at once, with the expected capability that it would be able to overwhelm the defensive and counter-missile systems of an
Carrier killer. Whose carriers did it kill? Like, which other country's carrier did it kill? Like, it probably has like multiple carriers under its belt if it's gonna have that kind of name.
entire US fleet. The ship was constructed in 1979 and was originally named Slava or Glory before being renamed to Moskva or Moscow in 1995 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. He was deployed in various modern Russian operations such as Georgia, Crimea, and Syria, and in February of 2022 he was deployed again, this time for the invasion of Ukraine. The Moskva was the warship involved in the now famous Snake Island incident.
Все. Я говорю, нахуй тоже надо.
На всякий случай.
And had been nicknamed Nemesis by the citizens of Odessa due to
Their response was, "This is it. Like, okay, this is the end." Rather than, "Okay, should we surrender? We're gonna survive. We surrender." Which is like the whole mental. If you go against people that has that kind of mentality, like, okay, we are the surrender is not even an option. We are dead now. Like, how are you gonna win against somebody like that? So that was one of the most insane event that happened. This is it. That's like really scary thing when you hear it. Should I told them go fuck themselves? Might as well type of whatever she said, just in case. And damn. And obviously they blew up the island. But that is the ship that went down. So it's like cherry on top. It's not just any ship. It's the ship that blew up the island now got destroyed.
Its constant attacks on the city with its missile system, apparently even strafing areas along the coast with its 130mm cannons. The targets were indiscriminate and apparently even civilian in nature, but these might just be a case of mistaken identity or potentially Ukrainian propaganda, though in fairness Russia has not shied away from attacking civilians throughout this campaign. Part of the reason we think that it's propaganda is because the Moskva does not have ground attack missiles. However, Ukraine has reported attacks on cities by both anti-air and anti-ship systems using a ground attack capacity. So either way you look at it, it's all a little bit fucky-wucky. Either could be true. I'm going to go with Ukraine's version. If I'm completely honest, they have been a lot more truthful than Russia has this war. Just going back to that story about the British trained or British commandos led or urged by Boris Johnson himself attacking the big-ass nuclear power plant Russia is currently using as an ad hoc munition storage warehouse. No, you heard right, they are storing ammunition in a nuclear reactor. What could possibly go wrong? They claimed that these supposed Ukrainian commandos, of which again, no solid evidence of their existence has ever been shown, had this document with them, supposedly an evaluation report on Ukrainian troops being trained in the UK. It claims that the Ukrainian troops were so incompetent that they could not handle modern firearms, and that the UK had to purchase Soviet-era AKs for them. Of course, the more observant of you may realise that this is not a UK evaluation report, and the fact that it quotes the 1974 Privacy Act, which is a US law, as well as an AR reference number, should indicate that this is actually a United States document for troop counselling. Or at least that's what it's supposed to look like. It's not a legit document, it's a free template for one I found on this website. I mean, for fuck's sake. This is what Russia has been reduced to.
Seriously. I don't even know what to say. You're doing war effort. Your country is about war. How do you fuck up a document like that? Like, you can't do better job than this? You can hack into US elections and things. You can do better job of like forging a document. You just took a fucking screenshot from Google or something. What the hell? This is supposed to be the high level of things from you. Like, at least do propaganda, right? Like, what? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, how do you, like, what? They just gave a job to some guy, just one guy, and he just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna take it from Google and just like did this. This is insanity. Like, I would have thought like, okay, at least they would make a better forged document that looks real, not something you take from Google.
It's quite sad. And they're buying ammunition from North Korea. I just want to emphasize that. They are buying ammunition from North Korea.
I mean, I know about that, and it's like there's a reason. Like, North Korea has these like certain things. They had this like, this kind of like a close distance artillery tool with them, but after like whatever they got now nukes and things, they don't need it type of way. So they're just like, we have it, so Russia can take it. So they had a lot of it. So it makes sense why Russia would buy from that. Like, it was just there. It might be cheap because North Korea would sell it cheap. Like, who else is gonna buy it?
Russia, everybody. But getting back to the Moskva, just to add to the fucky-wuckiness, no one is quite 100% sure what actually happened to the ship. Well, I mean, everyone else, apart from Russia, is 100% sure. Russia is the only country in the world currently disputing what I'm about to tell you. Throughout the month of April, Ukraine had been strengthening its anti-ship defences along the coast of Odessa and had sunk several Russian patrol craft in and around Snake Island. For this reason, the Moskva was ordered back out into open waters, but the Ukrainians hungered for vengeance. US intelligence had been keeping an eye on the ship and had been live feeding its coordinates and actions to Ukraine via 2 drones with a transponder code 40, which Reddit formed an unhealthy emotional attachment to. Because they all need therapy. Seriously, stop sexualizing inanimate objects. Go outside, get laid. For fuck's sake, I'm a goblin boy neckbeard. I got laid. You can too. You just like shower and like talk about what she's interested in and listen when she explains something and tell her you'd love to hear more. It's not that hard. Anyway, On the night of the 13th of April 2022 at around 8:42 p.m, a Facebook post by a Ukrainian volunteer claimed that Ukraine had attacked and hit the Moskva with 2 Neptune anti-ship missiles. This would later be confirmed by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Hours later, Russia would refute these claims, stating the ship had caught fire in rough seas but was otherwise fine. The ship turned to begin its journey back to Sevastopol for repairs. Cloud-penetrating satellite imagery showed the ship to be about 90 miles from the Ukrainian coast, but not moving, and was surrounded by several other vessels. These included a small Russian naval tugboat. This boat would provide the only known photographs of the Moskva at this time. The first image showed the ship heavily listing, smoke pouring from its interior, the life rafts were all missing, and the ship's onboard deck hoses set to continuous spray, forming a cross above the ship, a mark of respect often given to
Hold up there. So this is like the greatest warship, and like 2 missiles sank it. Like one thing I've noticed about like watching all these like military videos is like if you're like one of the big ass warships, like whatever, like US's Iowa class type of way, just 1 or 2 missiles is not enough. So was this like one of the biggest ship of the world? Like, come on.
doomed vessels, showing the crew had given up attempting to save him. The second photo was taken much further away, showing the ship almost completely engulfed in smoke. At around 1 AM on April the 14th, the ship began to broadcast an SOS. By 1:14 AM, the ship had rolled onto its side and power to the ship was lost. By 2 AM, a Turkish ship had arrived and began evacuating crew. By 3 AM, the Turkish ship was joined by a Romanian ship who reported that the Moskva, pride of the Russian Navy, had sunk. But how? Russia would always maintain the claim that the ship had been lost in a storm, but thanks to these pictures, we can clearly see that there was no storm and the seas were calm. After several weeks of analysis, the US Pentagon confirmed they believed the ship had been struck by a missile and sank due to the damage, but no one could understand exactly how. The Moskva wasn't exactly a rookie ship, it was a very modern vessel. It was equipped with a triple-tiered anti-missile and air defense system, and even if a missile had gotten through, the damage control systems of the ship were as good as any other. The ship had just been refitted in 2016, and the lack of funds had delayed that refit. By 2019, she was one of the most advanced warships of her time, according to Russia. While many naval experts have covered the sinking of the Moskva to death by now, most of them only made wild speculations on how exactly the ship was sunk, how Ukraine managed to bypass the ship's three-layered defense. Everything was speculated, from this actually being an internal explosion caused by fire, to it being a torpedo fired from a nearby British submarine HMS Audacious, to an idea that Ukraine had fired hundreds of missiles, overwhelmed the Moskva's defensive systems, and two had finally gotten through. But 2 weeks ago, we got our answer, in the form of this maintenance report carried out just 14 days prior to the invasion. And boy does it paint a sorry picture. For fans of the Moskva, the Soviet Navy, or even just naval ships in general, I apologise because this report is going to read like a horror story. Out of the 3-tier anti-missile systems in place, none of the actual systems were working at the time he was struck. The short-range sea-to-air launchers did not work, and the Phalanx last resort missile interception systems, of which the ship has 6 of, only 1 worked. The rest were being used for spare parts. This left the S-300 anti-air systems, which could theoretically protect the ship. However, the radar system they were linked to interfered with the communication system, and thus was turned off. But even when turned on, the system...
Okay, this shit is insanity. All the defenses were fucked, and they still deployed the ship. What, for just like image? Are they just flexing? Are they thinking if we flex just right enough, the people might be intimidated? Even all... The level of shit that happened when this ship was deployed was like clear, like Ukrainians are just not gonna get pushed over or whatever, right? And they just trying to flex or something. How the fuck everything's not working? Your greatest ship is this level of fucked, and you still deployed it. I don't understand this whole invasion. Like it clearly shows that everything from the ship and everything is just like most things are not working, most things are out of order, and you just like you can't control it. Even your chain of command is like. Like running left and right, doesn't know what to do, when to do it, how to like work. It just feels like, just one day Putin just decided like, fuck it, we're gonna invade, and everybody in military like, what the fuck, we're not prepared, and there you go. Like even the Moskva is like, I don't know, they could have, before deploying, they could have checked if the systems are working or not or whatever. It's just like, I don't get it.
Had apparently difficulty locking onto targets. And that twin-linked 130mm cannon that could be used as a backup to the Siwa system, yeah, that also didn't work. Hydraulics leak, apparently. And of the damaged control systems, yeah, none of those worked either. Several of the watertight doors were found to be leaking, some were wedged open. Out of the 500 fire extinguishers that were supposed to be on board, the ship only had 50, and due to constant theft, the safety equipment was locked in storage, of which only the Admiral had the key to, meaning in order to try and save the ship, the crew would first have to try and break open the lockers the safety equipment was in. It gets worse. Several of the engines were past their service replacement date by about 10,000 hours. They could only be turned on and run by express permission from the Admiral, meaning the ship was locked in at about half speed, but only for emergencies. The vast majority of the control systems were non-operable or simply did not have a functioning indicator light, meaning if there was a problem, no one on the bridge would know about it. The ship's generators were all quickly approaching their maximum service life and would appear to work at random. The steering gear was also partially jammed and the ship could only perform a 20-degree turn, and the entire ship had heating and cooling issues. Had the Moskva been a US ship and been found in this state, the captain would have been court-martialed. It would have been a major publicity scandal, hauled through the press to the tunes of the dancing reformers, claiming that all this high-expense...
Look, I don't care what people say. I don't see any US ship being this level of bad state. Nothing's working. Yeah, that's not gonna happen in anything US related. That's for damn sure.
Naval technology on board the ship was just a waste of time. The ship would have then probably been scrapped. My old river barge had less problems than this, and it still required an overhaul before it was deemed seaworthy again. But this is Russia. In spite of all the concerns discovered in the maintenance report, including an entire page on the galley that I won't get into, the ship was given a satisfactory rating, which was then signed off on by the Admiral. It was willingly and purposefully put into service into a
Does engine work? Yeah, it does. Can it float? Yes. Can it hold people? Yes. It's satisfactory.
That situation in this condition. The result being, when those missiles hit the ship, the Moskva did not even know it was under attack. There was simply a large explosion, possibly giving rise to the idea that damage was caused by an internal explosion. As if the captain had followed standard procedures for a Russian naval ship under attack, the weapon systems and consequently its radar would have been immediately switched on, meaning the communication system no longer worked, meaning there was no way for the engineering section to contact the bridge, and with most of the indicator lights non-operational, there would have been no way for anyone on the bridge to even realise the full extent of the damage until a runner from the lower decks arrived. By which point, unable to combat the fire, lock down the ship via the watertight doors, or even deal with the damage, the Moskva was good as sunk. The crew seemed to be in a panic, and even before light had fully faded, the ship had been abandoned, with possibly a small detachment remaining on board to try and save the vessel, but to no avail. The ship would go down in the small hours of the morning on April 14th, 2022. 56 members of the crew would have to be rescued by a Turkish ship which responded to their distress call.
And compared to this, US constantly boat now, it's like Gerald Ford class aircraft carrier and shit like that. US is just building up more and more tech, and this is the thing that's happening with Russia. I guess new challenger arriving from the horizon, whatever that meme is. I guess China is there, so I guess US can justify spending all that money, because it's against Russia it's not needed, is it? But yeah, against China maybe.
Russia would only admit to 5 members of the crew losing their life a full month later, despite as much as 26 still reported as missing. A few days later, the 110-year-old Russian salvage ship, the Kimono, I'm probably not saying that correctly, arrived at the wreck in order to salvage the bodies as well as the sensitive equipment on board the ship. If Renault was able to recover the supposed piece of the True Cross, which was contained in the ship's onboard chapel, is currently unknown. Fun fact, I have actually seen a piece of the True Cross. Well, the supposed True Cross. Last time I was visiting my mother in Spain, we went to the festival in Caravaca de la Cruz, the running of the wine horses, supposed to symbolize something, I don't know, some medieval siege of some description, I'm not entirely sure. Basically, they decorate a bunch of horses and then charge them up a hill with 4 riders hanging onto the sides for dear life through a crowd of people.
I'm not gonna lie, I live in India, so this is coming from an Indian. Everything that Spanish do is just whoa, what the fuck? That bull thing, something tomato fight or whatever. Now this is okay, I see things in India, I'm oh my god, people are so fucked up here, risking dangerous things. But look at this, horses charging and people are barely moving out of the way. That bull thing as well, it's a fucking bull. It's insanity, man.
Fastest time wins. During the build-up to the event, there was a parade that included the actual King of Spain. The guy was just on horseback with his wife, chatted happily with the crowds, and got so close to me I could have punched him in the face. Following him a little later came every
Imagine
police
that.
officer
Imagine that an American, he's American, right? Yeah, he's American. American known as Lazerpig just punches the king of Spain. Yeah, that's the news.
in Spain, including a man who I presume was the chief of police because of how fancy his uniform was. Now, these guys were forcing the crowds back, like riot shields and everything. I couldn't even take a photograph of it because one of them grabbed me and it was like, no photo, no photo, no photo. And I was like, okay, dude. I had an assault rifle. You do not argue with something like that, okay? So I was like, what the fuck is this? What's coming? What could be more important than the
Okay, this video is about Moskva. Where is he going with all this?
actual fucking king of Spain? And what it was a bunch of flowers. And the smuggest looking asshole I have ever seen in my life. He was so proud to be holding these flowers. And the crowd were going wild. They were so happy to see these flowers. Turns out it was a piece of the True Cross. Alleged True Cross. I mean, I have my doubts to the legitimacy of that claim, but there was no way I was going to voice my concerns in that crowd. Also, I gave the king of
I have doubts about every single piece of relic and even the artwork that exists in the world, from Mona Lisa to everything. Because if you tag something as important, somebody will forge it and replace it, and will forge it so good that none of you will ever know until like one day you create good enough technology. And even then, like whatever technology you will create, how would that detect something that is old? Maybe you can assume like this chemical, but a good forger would know everything and would just create a literal perfect copy and just like take it, right? So it's like those Hollywood type of movies, right? Whatever, like who's the guy? I forgot the name. Whatever, like Uncharted type of movies and things. I forgot that. Yeah, basically movies like that. Like, good forgers would basically do it. So I'm skeptical of every single famous piece out there. Like, how would you know this is really real?
Spain finger guns, and he gave them back to me. Proudest moment of my life. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, right, yeah, boats, right, okay. So, the Moskva wreck has now been claimed as a cultural heritage site by Ukraine. Poor maintenance and lack of wartime readiness sunk the Moskva, and honestly,
I mean, with Ukraine can claim it, will Russia just let them have it? Come on.
if this is the state of the flagship, what is the rest of their navy like? We may never know. The Russian navy stays mostly in
See, that's the one thing. Flagship. It's supposed to represent everything you have. If flagship sucks, everything sucks. This is the reason flagship is the reference point every company uses, even though they don't have anything to do with the ship. What is your flagship smartphone? Galaxy. So Samsung will be like, oh, it's our Galaxy S series. That's the flagship. iPhone doesn't have flagship. All are flagship. But yeah, basically like that. Any car manufacturer, this is our flagship car. It's like the best car we have. They'll put everything in that shit. Even if it makes less profit, they'll just oh, this is what our company represents. This was the flagship. Like, I'm not saying like this means everything sucks. I'm saying like this is a bad look. They should have seen that coming, right? If you send your flagship, it's like it's a risky. It's like they're not trying. They're preserving T14s if they have it. Like, we can't have this go on in a suck and basically like get dominated. That would be bad look. So why did you send your Moskva then? You knew the defense is not going to work. It's like even the fucking communication wouldn't work. You shouldn't have sent it. You should have kept it at your port or something.
port these days. In an effort to find some sort of conclusion for this, let me say this. The Moskva is the perfect symbol of Putin's modern Russia. All show, no punch. The Moskva was built in Ukraine. Like the Soviet Union, much of it was built in its member states, who suffered the harshest in the tough times, while those living in Moscow lived lives of luxury by comparison. It should therefore come as no surprise that the only people who look fondly back on the USSR are the Russians, not any of its former member states. And it's that mentality that dictates how the USSR in its history is presented to the Russian people, that Russia, not its empire, was able to compete with and surpass the combined efforts of the rest of the world, not by exploiting the resources of other nations, but by the exceptionalism of the Russian people, an amazing trait of almost heroic qualities only they possess above all other races. The trait of
That is very British thing, isn't it? And at the same time, that thing is from the Soviet, who's supposed to be opposite of that, because communism is supposed to be opposite of that. Like bourgeoisie, come on, what the fuck? And this is happening there, which is like ironically at top of it. I don't know.
the worker who can build anything bigger and better and faster than anyone else, the trait of the warrior race that through sheer will of strength and anger beat back the Nazis with absolutely no help from
Okay, warrior race. Okay, look, throughout the history, like Russia, I'll give them this. Russia has been the people like any other country would be like at this point, like okay, we give up. Russia, even with insane losses, still keep going all the way to the end until they win. And even if their losses reach something like 40% casualty or some shit, like most of the casualties of World War Two is like Russian. Out of 100 million, how many? I don't even know how many are Russian. Same thing in the past. Same thing in the Napoleonic War. Same thing everywhere. It's like they have a lot of, but that's like okay, they're like strong-minded people, sure. But warrior race, like how do you say that with that kind of casualties? I don't know. What is a warrior race on this planet? I guess I don't know. I don't even know who to like. I guess Vikings descendants. I don't know.
anyone else. It's that ignorance that led them to this moment. The Moskva was allowed to head into combat in the condition it was in because he was the most powerful warship afloat. A pathetic lesser country like Ukraine had nothing to compare and would capitulate quickly under the might of the Red Tide. They genuinely believed that the ship would never face anything that could even remotely threaten it. And any threat it did face could quickly be overcome because this was a Russian ship, crewed by Russians. And that was the whole attitude of Putin's Russia. The entire country, much like the Moskva, relies on the work of a far-gone empire with no understanding of how that empire was built and with none of the framework of that empire in place to support it. It has one of the largest military
I don't think it's that. I think it's just they just assume, like, first of all, like, Putin just assumed, like, if they attack it with full might, like, Ukraine will just either will be taken by surprise or just give up altogether. That didn't happen. That was a surprise. Okay. They did believe in, like, a lot of tanks. But I guess the most problem with that is, like, everybody fears Putin. So nobody wants to give him, like, real news of being afraid that they might be prosecuted. So nobody's telling him, like, tanks are not in the best condition. Moscow is not in the best condition. Putin just realizing, okay, this is, like, good equipment, let's send it. And then, what the fuck, it got destroyed, how? Nobody's going to tell him anything. That's the problem here.
on Twitter like Captain Copelord and his sparkly friends will spend the next few years telling us how much of a good thing this is for Russia, actually.
Okay, I still don't understand is why are they fucking using this anime thing him? Like, it doesn't feel weird to him? Like, that's just okay.
That Ukraine now has to suck NATO's ass for cheap handouts, which dilute it into a puppet state for the US to fight a proxy war with Russia, while Russia itself grows stronger. But the rest of the world may learn a little bit better from this. The next time Russia charges all its armies to the border and stamps its feet for not getting its way, I rather think Europe and the United States might now finally be less willing to bow to its demands. But because I do on occasion feel
See, it doesn't matter. They have the nukes, so yeah, they will always have to think about twice. It was never about will Russia attack or not. Like it's always about like Russia has nukes. NATO compared was always more powerful than Russia. US alone is more powerful than Russia. Now the NATO countries combined, Russia has no chance. Nukes are the issue.
the need to remind people war is not glorious. It's fun to be back here in a comfortable chair with all the maps and telegrams and Twitter feeds watching the war unfold and cheering for joy when non-credible defense and NATO get a shout out from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. But there is a harsh reality to war that is often screened from those not actively on the front lines. It's easy to look at the now 50,000 soldiers Russia has lost as faceless individuals in uniforms, my enemy, and perhaps even
Yeah, that's the thing. But I'm glad Lazerpig said that. Even though to me it feels like not his character, but I guess I just watched one or two videos, so I don't know. But yeah, it's like all the Russians lost their life. It's like fucked up. Like they didn't ask for this. Putin just said, "Fuck it, we are doing this," and like they are working with bare minimum equipment, and they just like they don't even want to do this, and they lost this fucking life. So yeah, wars are fucked up, very fucked up.
take a little joy in their deaths. This was Mark Tarasov. Mark wanted to be a train driver, but to do so he needed a military ID, so not wanting to be in the army, he signed up for a year's service in the Navy. This is him back in December on his first day of deployment. His parents next to him looking so proud because he'd just been assigned to the Moskva. the flagship. Mark is listed as one of the 27 missing crewmen. The Russian government will not admit if he is alive or dead, and because of this, his parents have been unable to hold a funeral or properly grieve for their son. He was 19 years old. Gonzalo Rila and the Cope Brigade can do and say whatever they want. For the 50,000 Russian families with empty seats at the dinner table, there is no glory gained in the blood of children.
Yeah, that's the most fucked up. That story is insane. Like, damn, man, he just like I know about many people that basically enlist for army just for some purposes. Like some they don't have full citizenship, so they needed to do that, or they needed some license here and there. 19-year-old just tried to do that for train license or whatever. Moskva and like goes missing. Your country don't even acknowledge if you're dead or not. Like that's so fucked up. The problem with all this is like Putin can do all these things, but all the people who lost their life and the parents of those people and everything will remember all this, right? This is going forward. Like a lot of Russian people will remember all this shit. It's a real impact in their life. It's not just some stat or some number or just like, oh, there's another war. No, it's their life, their children's life. They will fucking remember this. So yeah, this will have much more ripple effect going forward. Right, well, that was what sung the Moskva by channel Lazerpig. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.